So you might think I'm a little crazy to take on this project today because I was going through Facebook Marketplace, saw this, zoomed in, thought, oh, you know, there's that really cool detail on the front. It might be something special. So my daughter and I went and picked it up. It was $40. There was only one picture and I didn't realize the condition of it when I agreed to buy it. But let me show you.
There was only one picture on Facebook Marketplace. So sometimes when you see something you think you might like, you just go grab it. And gosh, I wish I had seen a few more pictures. You see all that crackling on the top. She said it had been spray painted. So I don't even know if there was primer used, but so many drips all over it. Not even a really good paint job. I mean, spray paint, you can use spray paint, but gosh, not even a good spray paint. And it's like a horror movie in the back. It's just dripping everywhere. And then the tough thing is you get around to the front and you see that they've painted over the hardware for one. And then when you open it up, there's all these drips along the top of the drawers, and it's on every single drawer. And then what I didn't see is there's so much paint overspray on the sides, on the bottom, on the back of the drawer. I mean, everywhere. And then that turquoise paint, that teal turquoisey paint, it's so hard to get off. So I do see there's a little bit of wood there. So I'm hopeful that there's some wood underneath there. You know, with Bassett, sometimes there's a laminate top, so you just don't know. So I'm just going to start by stripping off all of these drawer liners. Unfortunately, they didn't come off as nicely as I was hoping. They came off in little bitty shreds. I could have got my steamer out, but you know, I just got some really hot water and some washcloths, and it came up really quickly with my 5-in-1 tool. But of course, there were 9 drawers, so it took a while. Of course, because the drawer liners were down, it honestly kind of preserved the drawers. They're in really good shape, the bottom of them, except there's no overspray on the inside where the drawer liners were. All the overspray is on the sides and on the back and on the bottom. So, but at least the drawer interiors themselves look pretty good. Because the back was in such bad shape, I decided I'm just going to go ahead and pull it off and I'll get a new one cut. I like to take the legs off if possible, but these were actually screwed in from the inside and I didn't want to mess with it. So I decided I'll just leave them and I can refinish them with them being on the piece.
Okay, I'm ready to strip the piece. I've been using Clean Strip, which is a good stripper, but it's so fumy that I really just want to try something else. I have to have my respirator on the whole time. Our room is right inside from the garage, and sometimes at night, you know, if I'm stripping a piece, the smell lingers and I can even smell it at night. So for safety reasons, you know, I really just want to try something else. And so I've never used Greenies, but a lot of people have recommended it. So I ordered it through Wise Owl. You can order it through their website, you can order it on Amazon through Wise Owl. But I got the stripper and I got their finish cleaner as well. So I usually use acetone or something to kind of as an after wash as well. But I'm just gonna dive in, try it, see how it works. Some people say it takes longer, but my thing is if I don't have all the fumes and it's safer to use, I'm okay with it being a little bit longer. Plus I usually always have 2 projects I'm working on, so I can just move over and do another project while this one is working. So let's give it a go.
Start the stripping process. It said to kind of shake it up really well. I'm going to decant a little bit into just a plastic bowl here, and then I'm going to use a paintbrush, and then I'm going to apply it liberally to the top. The thing with strippers is kind of interesting. You have to really work on your timing because you want to do one section and then you have to come back and you have to, you know, scrape it off. And then sometimes if that takes too long, then the next area that you've done, it starts drying on you. So it's a real kind of time maintenance issue with stripping. So you have to kind of, I'm still working on perfecting my method. So after about an hour, you see the time lapse there. After about an hour, there were several areas that were bubbling up. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to try it and see how it's doing. So it was doing pretty good in a few of the areas, but there was a lot of other areas that it was sticking pretty good still. So I decided to do another light layer of stripper. Then I'm just going to let it set and see if it can get down farther. So after the second coat on the top and the side here, you can see it's coming up a lot cleaner. So I'm just using a putty knife. I'm not even using a carbide scraper. So it's just coming up, and the interesting thing is it's really taking the finish off underneath the paint as well. So I don't know how many layers of paint this was. I don't know if there was a primer or not. I can't really tell, to be honest. And so, but it's coming up really well. So the top was pretty thick. You can see there is some white underneath that turquoise, which leads me to believe, at least on the top, that there might have actually been a primer underneath it. So I'm just going to go ahead and use my carbide scraper and take it off. That way I can get down to the raw wood. I'm using acetone as my after wash. I find that because it's a paint remover, it's a really great after wash. So I just pour some on, use a paper towel, trying to get a little bit of that residue off, and then I'll come back with some double steel wool. And if I have some detail areas, I'll come in with a wire brush, and I'll just try to get as much of that finish off as I can. The more finish I can get off now during the stripping process allows me to do less sanding later on. And as a final step, I'm going to use Greenies. This is their cleaner, their finish cleaner. So I'm going to go after the acetone. I'm going to go over the entire surface with their cleaner. And I'm not exactly sure what it does. Like I said, this is the first time I've used this product, but it probably neutralizes something in the stripper. So here's what it looks like after 2 coats of stripper. You can see it's uniformly bubbled up. This is after 2 coats, but it hasn't dried quite as long, and I just put 1 coat on that last area. So you see it's kind of a progression. I like to do one area first and then let it do its job and then work on stripping it back, and then I'll come and kind of progressively go down so that you don't want the stripper to dry out on you if possible. So I found these new abrasives that you can attach to your drill, and it's really great for getting into tiny little detail areas that would be difficult to get to with any kind of scraper or sandpaper.
Okay, I'm done with all the stripping. It came off really good. Now, just like with any stripper, there's kind of a timing issue. So what I noticed is I put the stripper on, I waited for about an hour, and then I could see it was bubbling up, but not everywhere. So I put another light coat on the areas that weren't bubbling, and then waited a little bit longer, and then you could see it was kind of uniformly bubbled. And then I was able to scrape it off with my putty knife. I didn't even have to use my Carbide scraper in a lot of the areas. And you know what I noticed is it wasn't just taking off the paint, it was taking off the finish underneath the paint. So it really had gotten down deep, which is pretty impressive. So obviously there's timing issues. Sometimes, it said 2 to 4 hours. And I do think that it was probably 2 hours by the time I put the one coat on, put the second coat on, it was probably 2 hours. So, stripping is just time intensive because you don't just have the time for it to set, but then you have to come back and scrape it all off. And so my process was I was able to use my putty knife for quite a bit of it, but there were some areas it was pretty stubborn. So I had to use my Carbide scraper in some areas, and then I had to use a wire brush, I had to use acetone and 00 steel wool to really get it off. And so I still have a lot of work on it because there's still white paint stuck in the wood grain, and so I'm gonna have to go back with my wire brush and some acetone and try to get as much of that paint off as possible. And there's a ton of overspray in the drawer. So I got a lot of work ahead, but did I like the greenies? Yes, I really did. I'll link it down below. I was pretty impressed in the fact that there was no fumes and that it worked so well. I'll definitely try it again. I'd really like to try it on just a wood finish and see how it does with that. So right now, I would say thumbs up. I was impressed.
Now I'm going to start the sanding process. I usually start at 80 grit for any areas that still have finish left on it. But again, this took off so much of the finish that this will be a pretty light sanding. And then I'll move up to 120 grit, and then I will finish off at 180, and then I'll pause to decide how I want to finish it. I have to use a variety of tools when I'm sanding. I have these little contours that I can wrap around some sandpaper, and it helps me get into those small details. I'll use all kinds of things. I'll use a Bondo scraper that is really great for getting into tiny crevices. I have some little dental tools that I get that I can get into small areas, especially a piece like this that has all this paint that I'm trying to get off. Dental tools actually work really well to get into those little bitty crevices. I usually like to hand sand my last grit because you get these sanding swirls with your sander, any kind of orbital sander you use. So I like to usually hand sand that last grit up at 180, and just to make sure that I'm refining my scratch pattern, make sure that there's no more sanding swirls, anything like that. So it provides a really fine finish. So I mentioned at the beginning there was so much overspray on these drawers. Not just overspray, but you can see there was paint drips. So I'm using my little pocket scraper, and I'm going in and I'm trying to get off as much as I can with the pocket scraper, and then I'll sand it, and then I'll try to go in with some acetone and get as much of it off as I can. Did I get it all off? No, especially this turquoise color, but I got as much as I could. On some of the drawers, there was still some white paint stuck in the wood grain, so I had to take some acetone with a wire brush and go individually over every drawer and try to get as much of that white paint off as possible. I'm going to use some oxalic acid on the top drawers because in those detail areas there was some blue paint that was just almost had like dyed the wood. And so I'm going to try to use some wood bleach, try to kind of neutralize that color and see if I can get it out of those detailed areas. You have to be really careful with this. Make sure you use your respirator with it. You're going to dissolve it in some hot water and then you're going to apply it, and you just keep applying it about every 10 minutes until you get the lightness that you're looking for. And then after you're done, you're going to triple rinse it. I ended up just taking a water hose to it briefly and just rinsing it off really well, and that's going to neutralize it.
So now I'm ready to stain the piece. I did a poll survey on Instagram, YouTube, even TikTok, and so many varying responses I got on TikTok. Oh no, it's going to be another beige wood. And then over on YouTube, I got, no, keep it clear. Don't put anything on it. It's going to be beautiful. And then a lot of mediums. And so the choices can be very overwhelming. You're trying to decide a finish on a piece, especially if you're not keeping it for yourself. So I have to look at my market. I have to look at the piece itself and try to decide. I even got some two-tone ideas for like the top drawers to be a different color. But I thought about it a lot overnight, and I got on General Finishes has a design center, and so sometimes I like to go on there for some inspiration. And I saw a piece that reminded me of another technique you can do, which is toning. And so there was this piece I really thought was beautiful, and I have toned in the past one other piece, and it turned out really good. This particular piece, my concern is when I tried Salem and I tried antique oak, it was pulling red. Now the top and the sides and the drawers are one type of wood, and then the frame is a lighter color wood. So it's gonna take it differently, but I really didn't want it pulling the red. So I have settled on something completely different. What I'm gonna do is I have green dye stain, and so I'm going to use a very tiny bit of green dye stain with light brown dye stain. The green is going to cancel the red undertones, and then the light brown, I'm going to add it to top coat. You can add 10 to 20% to your top coat, and that acts as a toner. And then you can just apply the number of coats that you want until you get the color that you achieve. Now on my last piece, I just put one coat of toner on it. And then after that dries, then you go ahead and follow up with your clear coat of your top coat, and that locks in your color. So we're gonna try it. Let's go.
You can add up to 20% of the stain into your top coat. So I decided I'm going to just do 10%. So I'm going to measure out, I'm just using a kitchen scale with ounces. I'm going to go up to 10 ounces. And then I'm going to put in 9 ounces of the actual top coat, and then I'm going to do 1 ounce of the dye stain, and then I'm going to add just a touch, 2 teaspoons of the green dye that'll hopefully kind of neutralize some of those red tones. I always like to make sure I strain my products just in case there's any kind of contaminants so it doesn't clog up my spray gun.
I sprayed my first coat of toner and it went okay, but I made 2 mistakes. I would tell you guys all my mistakes. So the first mistake I made was I didn't make up enough of the toner. So I was in the middle of doing the drawers and I ran out, and so it was sputtering and I had to run over and grab some denatured alcohol with water, try to get off the product that was on there. I also used the Green Ease finishing cleaner, just took it right back off and before it could set because it was all blotchy. And then 2 of the drawers I did have to resand just a little bit, and then I was able to let that dry and then go ahead and mix up some more toner, and those are fine. And then a second mistake I made was I went too fast. And so, you know, with toner, you have to have a very even pattern because you're not just laying down clear product, you're laying down color. So you have to go really evenly and you have to overlap your lines really well. And so I tend to go a little fast with my gun, but you have to really slow down because you have to remember, you know, the gun kind of comes out, it's real fast, but it's like microbursts. And so you have to give enough time for the product to lay down smoothly. So I have a couple areas on the top and on the side that are a little uneven. I'll come back and catch it on my second coat, but I do love the tone. The little bit of green just kind of cut that red, and it's a really beautiful mid-tone. So that's where we're at. Here's the first coat of the toner. Do you see there's an area right here? To me, it looks like it's too thick. So I'm gonna go back through and I feel like this area back here also didn't get a very good even tone. This side, you can see there's just a little area right here that looks a little uneven. So not bad, but just, you know, I'm gonna have to figure that out. And then there's an area here that I don't like, and I don't know what happened here. So I'm gonna have to, I don't know if I'm gonna sand that down, maybe put some toner there. I don't know. And then this was obviously already there. I have this little area here that'll need to be, that's like the only area that had like some veneer issues. And of course it didn't take it right there either. So a few little spots, but you can also see the frame is a different color as well. So I may just leave it like that, I'm not sure. I'll put the drawers back in and test it, but that's after 1 coat of the toner. And here's the drawers. They're looking pretty good too. I just sprayed those, and so they are all drying.
So for this little area, I decided to try to sand it back. I'm using 180, and then I will use 220, and then probably like a 320. And so I noticed that sometimes if you're trying to blend something in to an area really close to it, that if you go with a higher grit, it kind of closes the grain so it won't take on as much of the stain. So it worked pretty good in this little area. Here's my second coat. I can already tell by this shot that it's just too thick, and you'll see later I have some problems. And I'm scraping it all back off. Let me tell you what happened.
Well, I feel really stupid because the first coat of toner went on too light, so I overcompensated, and the second one went on too thick, and there were drips. So I've had to strip the top again. I know better. I didn't check my settings. I was like, this is pretty thick. And I just kept going. I was in a hurry, but I'm so mad at myself because I know better. But mistakes happen, and I'm super bummed. But you know what? It is what it is. Got some dinner plans with some girlfriends. I'm gonna go to dinner. I'm gonna enjoy myself. And I'm going to come back tomorrow and I'm gonna fix it because at least I know how to fix it. So mistakes happen.
So it's a little bit worse than I'm even going to show because I ended up having to take the whole thing down. So everything got sanded, scraped off, and I had to start over. So one mistake, just being in a hurry, caused me double work. And so I know better. And I just, you know, when I get in a hurry, I just don't do my best work, obviously. And so take my advice. I didn't even put hardly any of it in here because it was just like, oh, I'm going to tell you about it because I tell you my mistakes, but I don't want to bore you with just another whole round of scraping everything off. But this time I decided instead of spraying, I just put it on with a rag, with an applicator. The frame is actually a different color, so I'm going to try a medium brown stain. I used a light brown stain on the drawers on the top and the side. So I'm going to try medium brown and see if that will give me a little bit darker tone that I'm looking for. I'm going to apply this area with just a little paintbrush to see if I can get into those areas without, because I don't want it to touch the sides because that's a totally different wood tone. I found this actually wasn't quite dark enough once it dried, so I went ahead and sanded it back, and I used antique walnut, and then I did some nutmeg over that. I'm still not like 100% in love with it, but it's a lot closer to the tone of the rest of the dresser. So for the drawers, I was going to line them, but honestly, they're in really good shape. So I gave them a really good sand, and I'm just going to go through, clean them, and I'm going to refresh them with some light walnut Danish oil. I have a couple little touch-ups. I'm going to use the darker wood stain and see if I can fill in this area a little bit more. For the hardware, I had to soak them in acetone for a little bit, and then I'm just going through with some Barkeeper's Friend and some wire brush and some steel wool to try to get them as polished up as possible. You can see on the interior there, it took a little bit of time, but with that wire brush, but the Barkeeper's Friend really helped get that all polished up. Okay, let's look back at the before of the Blue Beast. This one almost got the best of me. My goodness, so many problems. You see where we started. We had all of the crackling on the top and just so many drips. This paint job was just horrible. You saw the back. It was like, well, it was kind of like a horror movie. So much stripping, so much sanding, and then of course all the problems I had that I caused for myself with just being in a hurry, and my goodness, lots of sanding, scraping, sanding and scraping again. But after all of that, here is the finished product. What do you think? I'm pleased. I am very pleased. I could nitpick. I mean, there are some things. Now, she's not 100% done. This is just one coat of wax, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to photograph this thing and we're going to get this video out. So she's going to get one more round of wax. And I'm still not 100% in love with the tone of those, of the frame, but I still might mess with it, but it is so close. And look at that top. Can you believe it? I love it. My goodness. The hardware, I was so pleased that it just really polished up beautifully. See all that gorgeous wood. Those had to be stripped down twice. Bless their hearts. But man, enjoy some of these videos and I'll come back at the end. All right, tell me what you think. Do you like it? Do you think I should have gone with a different color? Should I have just gone with raw? Or do you think I should have gone darker? Tell me what you think. And thanks so much for watching.